global multilateral, realizing just transitions. Welcome to the German Climate Pavilion at COP30 in Billy.
And with that, welcome everybody here at the German Climate Pavilion on a beautiful Energy Day. Oh, thank you so much for coming by, for making space in your busy calendars. And of course, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, dear online audience, for coming in and switching in our live stream. And when we talk about now a very important and interesting topic when it comes to clean tech, how to create jobs, how to reduce emissions, and how to drive innovations through clean tech. And this idea for this side event came from the intention to highlight really the economic opportunities of emerging future market, and of course the opportunities when it comes to accelerating clean tech, as clean tech technologies, as you all know, represent a major engine for economic growth, and they are, of course, a key tool for building equitable international climate partnerships. So in the next good 50 minutes or so, we'd like to debate on the question, how can clean tech be a key driver in promoting the economic opportunities of the transition? And secondly, of course, what role can clean tech play in advancing international partnership? And the word that is really the motto of this COP, multilateral. So what are clean tech possibilities when it comes to international partnerships? And we kick off this side event with a keynote by the CEO and the Chief Sales Officer of Everllence. So I welcome here on stage virtually Uwe Lauber. The stage is yours.
Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for the opportunity to contribute to this great session here. I'm grateful to the German Pavilion for putting this important topic on the agenda. It clearly shows that we are truly at a turning point. Our societies and economies are navigating a challenging transformation on a path to climate neutrality. We face climate change, geopolitical tensions, and rapid technological shifts. These challenges are real, but they also present a historic opportunity to upgrade our economies and make them more sustainable, resilient, and innovative. At Everllence, formerly most likely known for you as MAN Energy Solutions, we experience both the challenges and the successes of transformation every day. Reinventing ourselves has been essential to remain competitive and to actively contribute to growth in a decarbonized global economy. Our mission, moving big things to zero, helps our industrial customers to achieve economic decarbonization. Our focus, technologies that decarbonize the hard-to-abate sectors. As being part of the Volkswagen Group, we employ around 15,000 employees, mainly at 10 European and 5 German production sites, and serve global markets through our international sales and service network. We already offer industrial scale decarbonization solutions, large heat pumps for industrial and district heating, full value chain for green hydrogen, hydrogen derivatives, and carbon management. As being the world's market leader in maritime engines, we've invested heavily in engines that run on low and zero carbon fuels like ammonia, methanol, synthetic methane, or ethanol. Climate change is a global issue. While we must act locally, our efforts must align globally. The COP is the unique forum where the world comes together to raise awareness and find solutions to this shared challenge. The needed technologies to meet CO2 reduction targets already exist. German and European industries are global leaders in many, many areas. The challenge now is not the development, it's the implementation. To facilitate this implementation, policymakers must create a competitive regulatory framework that encourages investments in transformation. We need protection of intellectual property, skilled labor, and efficient bureaucracy, competitive access to raw materials and climate neutral energy, CO2 pricing and incentives that make climate action economically viable, and last but not least, in addition to reforms, we need real decarbonization projects and international energy partnerships at industrial scale. The global climate transformation is not only necessary, it is already underway. Already it secures jobs and opens up entirely new businesses, models delivering tangible benefits for society, the economy, and the climate. Let me give you three main examples. First of all, heat transition. Two of our large heat pumps, 60 megawatt of electricity needed, now supplying 25,000 households with sustainable heat, replacing a coal-fired plant, and by doing that, saving more than 120,000 tons of CO2 on an annual basis. Second, sustainable building. We commissioned just recently the world's first industrial-scale CO2 capture facility in the cement industry. While doing that, we're going to reduce emissions by over 400,000 tons on an annual basis. Third example, the maritime energy transition. Our ammonia-fueled engines mark a new era in carbon-free maritime propulsion. Following successful tests, the first engine is delivered to the shipyard in 2025, and alternative fuels in shipping are the gold standard to bring down emissions from maritime transport, which currently still accounts for around 3% or even more of global greenhouse gas emissions. With that examples I've shown you, the technology is there and already working. Climate protection done right drives economic growth. We must treat it as a business case, develop scale and market technologies quickly and globally. We Europeans must overcome ideological divisions and act as a strong, united Europe. As a united economy, as a united Europe, we can offer meaningful contributions to its partners at COP30. At past COPs, I've personally experienced a common understanding. International cooperation is not optional, it's essential. In a world shaped by crisis and uncertainty, COP remains one of the last global platforms for real dialogue and progress. Together we can tackle the climate crisis and, of course, therefore also we can accelerate the implementation. So thank you for that.
Thank you very much, Uwe, for joining us virtually. Please stick in the live stream and follow along, of course, our beautiful panel debate. But thank you for your first input. And now with that, I welcome my panelists here on stage. Please join me, Dr. Heike Henn, Holger Lösch, Rafael, Segrera, Rodrigo, Sauaia, and Maria Mendiluthin. I'll do the proper introduction when we have a quick sit down, breathing in and facing the heat, of course. Wonderful. Yes, I mentioned before our guiding questions for our now panel debate. How can clean tech be a key driver in promoting the economic opportunities of the transition, and of course, what role can clean tech play when it comes to advancing and bringing forward these international partnerships. With me on stage is Dr. Heike Henn. To the left, she's the Director General for International Climate Policy at the Federal Ministry for the Environment, Climate Action, Nature Conservation and Nuclear Safety. So Heike, thank you for joining us. We also have Holger Lösch with us. Holger Lösch is the Deputy Director General of the Federation of German Industries and a member of its Executive Board. Thank you, Holger. Then we have Rodrigo Sauaia with us, the co-founder and CEO at the Brazilian Solar Photovoltaic Energy Association, also known as Solar. Yes, and he's telling us more about the value chain operations, etc., and of course his perspective on clean tech. Thank you very much for joining us, Rodrigo. Then we have Rafael Segrera with us from Schneider Electric. You're the global executive with nearly 30 years at Schneider Electric, including leadership roles such as the president for South America. Thank you again for being here as well, Rafael. And last but not least, Maria Mendiluce is with us, the CEO of the We Mean Business Coalition that has mobilized over 17,000 companies to date committing to Paris-aligned emissions reductions. And if you follow the We Mean Business Coalition ahead of COP30, this coalition released a white paper realigning incentives to business case for an affordable, secure and clean energy transition. So again, thank you to Maria as well for being here. Beautiful. So Holger, I'd like to start with you. When we talk about clean tech and of course the current state of global clean tech, how would you describe from the German clean tech sector perspective, where do you see its main strength coming to clean tech, the clean tech sector, and where do you see the challenges in accelerating clean tech from a German industry perspective?
Yeah, thank you for the invitation. Well, first of all, from an industry perspective, we have to look at two things. First of all, how do we decarbonize our existing industry? And the second thing is, how do we make business with technology globally, in Europe, in Germany? So those are our two perspectives. This is important to look at this. We did a study last year where we clearly said, okay, we need to strike a balance. We need to make sure that the existing value chains, the existing value creation patterns are having a chance in the transformation. This applies especially for those who are in the more sophisticated parts of the abatement curve, so highly energy intensive chemical industries and others. How do we make the conditions for everybody better in general to do business in Germany? And the third thing, and this is what we are talking about now, is so what is the future of industry? Because industry is innovating over centuries all the time. Company which has been founded in 1860, like many in Germany are, definitely doesn't do the same thing as they did 1816. So they have been transforming. And in this future markets, future technologies, green tech plays an important role. Green tech, AI, automation, medical tech, and so on. So green tech plays a huge role. Germany has perhaps not the best capacity, as history has shown, to produce solar modules, cost, labor, stuff like that. But we are, of course, one of the leading industrial places in the world. So we know how to do big things, how to integrate different systems, electricity, energy, manufacturing and so on, chemical aspect. So I mean, this is our great strengths, and here we should try to develop our strengths in the future. What is hindering us, of course, and I said, striking a balance. I mean, so I don't want to stretch the German debate about bureaucracy here, but it's a debate, labor costs, taxes, energy costs, and so on. So we have a lot of homegrown issues which we can solve ourselves. But if we can solve them, I think we can really play a great role in green tech in the future.
Thank you for that first start. Rodrigo, and when we look into emerging markets that are currently offering the greatest opportunities for global clean tech operations, into which emerging markets are you specifically looking into?
Well, first of all, I would like to thank the opportunity and the organizers and congratulate you for the wonderful pavilion. It is a pleasure for us to be here representing not only Brazil as the Brazilian Solar Association, but also the Global Solar Council, which I currently chair and represents the solar sector as a whole. I would start by saying that we have opportunities spread throughout the world, especially when we talk about renewable energy development. That is a key part of the energy transition effort. And this is both true for developed countries and developing countries. And on that front, it is very important that we join hands. And we have worked together with the German Association for 10 years now, with the German Solar Association, on learning from some of the best practices and experiences from the German Association and the German market, and bringing that into the Brazilian market. And this helped us leapfrog some of the efforts and the challenges and the barriers that we saw in other markets. So we managed to avoid some of these hurdles. Countries that are working very fast on renewable energy include some Latin American countries. I would highlight Brazil, but also Mexico, despite of some political challenges, and Chile. These have been the three, let's say, main horses that were running this race in the region. There are new incomers now, such as Colombia and to some extent Peru. And we saw recently an important energy storage auction in Argentina, which is also relevant to mention. And there are some good efforts taking place in Uruguay as well.
Thank you, Rodrigo. Heike, I come to you then with the, the economic opportunities that are, of course, also a topic when we debate about clean tech. So what role would you see can clean tech play in promoting economic opportunities on the way of the transition towards climate neutrality?
Yeah, thank you very much, and thank you for putting this important topic in the pavilion. I think the headline opportunities is just the right way of tackling it, and I think at least in some parts of the German discussion or European, it's more about the conflict between climate and business and the growth of the economy, and I think we should embrace and foster really the chance for clean tech. I mean, it's the fastest growing part of the German economy, even already 8% of the experts and growing. And I mean, we just heard there's demand because other countries want to leapfrog and have the chance to just due to the time and the technology development to just leave some of the technologies just behind or never use them. So this is, I think, where is a huge interest. And if with the ETS and other elements, we put a cost on carbon. And by doing so, okay, not everybody likes it the same instance, but this is also an incentive for innovation, and not only to then have less cost, but you can also drive this, use this innovation then for new businesses, to what you develop for yourself. The great German engineers, I must say, apart from other elements. So what you find as innovation, you can then bring into partnerships and collaborations with other countries. So I think innovation, clean tech is a key part for a just transition for a country like Germany, but many others.
Maria, of course, what Heike just mentioned, that first conflict between climate and business, is that something from the old times or is that still existing?
I think it's from the old times. We did a survey across the world, including Germany, and across the world, 97% of business are going to invest in clean technologies in the next 10 years. Businesses might relocate from countries where they don't have access to renewables. So the future is electric, the future is clean. The future is clean, we see it because it's most competitive than the fossil fuels. It is electric because when an energy source is cheaper, then there's going to be a lot of incentives to move there. It also, for countries like Germany, obviously, the energy security element is fundamental, it's creating jobs. But yeah, I fully agree. As I was listening to you, from Germany, yes, I mean, if there's something that makes German proud, is the innovation, no, and the engineering part. Well, if you look at how to electrify the energy uses of the industry, but how do you do that in a more holistic way, where you review all the processes to be more efficient as a whole? There is a huge opportunity that brings down the cost and increase the competitiveness of the industry. So I find that well managed and communicated, this could be an inspiring moment for the industry to embrace the change as a challenge for the great engineers that you have in your country.
Thank you. Rafael, I saw you nodding. So coming in from the business perspective, of course, we are also curious to hear your perspective on the question, how can clean tech strengthen, for you also, cooperation and international partnerships? Where do you see the biggest opportunities?
So first of all, thank you. I join my colleagues thanking for having this opportunity. So just probably a few words, why Schneider Electric, why we are here, right? Schneider Electric is a it's a European company, French origin, but a truly global one. And we are an advanced tech in the energy field company, right? When we say this, I fully agree with your statement and the importance of the electrification. The great European engineers, how they have been, companies are so efficient on electrifying, on automatize, but also then to take this to the next level, which is basically digitalization, okay? So this is what we do to earn our life. When we look at the cooperation and how this should and must continue to evolve, we also see, and I like very much when you say, we see these challenges as a great opportunities. Great opportunities because, frankly, when you look the possibilities you have in generating more jobs, people are afraid, generally speaking, because AI will take the jobs on this and that. We are listening to this all across. And what our studies, and we have been doing this with different companies, with consultants in different areas, we have a big demand of green skills that we are not able to supply today, right? So the request for these skills is 2 times bigger than the offer of the market in terms of this competence. So we have the opportunity to train more people. We have the necessity to train the people. Otherwise, this gap will continue to evolve. So areas of collaboration start with education. When you look at north-south, education, if you want to implement at scale and speed these technologies that are coming from around the world, we need to make sure that the people are qualified to implement this, okay? So education, again, at the very center. Then these technologies must arrive at, if they are not produced locally, must arrive at considerable accessible prices. So here the trade, and when we talk about policymakers need to consider this also, because otherwise, with the difference we have, we create also a bottleneck. So 2 bottlenecks we observe. It's not technology. Technology is available. Technology is there. It's generated and created in Europe. It's generated and created in Asia, right? But we need to make sure that they arrive. When they arrive to those other markets that are the most dynamic markets in the south, need to be with a good level of price. So this is trade, and the people need to be qualified to implement it all across at scale and speed.
Beautiful, because we talk about scaling clean technology, and of course that brings me back to the German perspective and Germany's industrial and climate policy. Heike, how is the German industry and the climate policy, how do they support the scaling up of the clean technology when it comes to green skills?
Yeah, I mean, the incentive, as I said before, for the transition of the industry in Germany is, of course, for example, first the CO2 pricing. And at the same time, thinking about what Herbert was mentioning next to me, thinking about how we want to innovate where there are specific sectors where you, on top of the pricing of carbon 2, you give more incentives for change. For example, yesterday the decision for startups in the German government to provide more financing. And I think these are some key policies, have a price on carbon, show the direction of where the industry companies should invest, and make it, by doing so, a business for them, because they save money, and not only for themselves, but as before, have it for others as well. And when I look for the international dimension of it that I'm responsible for, I mean, here in the negotiations, we talk a lot about finance. But finance is a part of the equation that I mentioned for Germany as well. But policy consistency, not every business might like every policy, but either you change it quickly or you then need consistency. And I think we heard calls also, and we were very thankful for your interview also the last days in several media, asking for more consistency and then describing that within a certain policy and travel, like now with the EU 2040 goal, we have a clear pathway that businesses can then align with and plan for. And I think this is key if we want to really make it a just transition for people and businesses, not to lose competitiveness, that we have a clear pathway, we don't zigzag, and support on the way accordingly.
Maria, I'm coming back to you in a second, but just mentioning Holger, when we talk about consistency, and of course from the industry perspectives, can you give us again the key argument that you need from the industry perspective to accelerate and to scale up clean technology on the long run? What do you expect then from policymakers?
I mean, for part of the industry, they need a consistency that there is going to be a business case in the future. Otherwise, they wouldn't invest anymore. So this is one case. The other thing is what I would say, a consistency in making things possible, making things happen. I mean, I talked about bureaucracy. I mean, the European regulation for the production of green hydrogen is the opposite of favorable to scale it. Absolutely. So we need to do compromises, and we need to give way for companies to really invest there. Otherwise, others are going to do the investment, and we probably never see the green hydrogen which we so dearly need, and where we really wanted to do a great business or a great job on that. So I think what the EU Commission now decided makes sense. It reflects the question, can we do everything until the last molecule in a competitive way in Europe? Maybe open up windows like Article 6, which we are going to discuss later on here. I think we need to have more of this discussion. It's not about preserving everything in industry like it is today. This is definitely not useful. It's going to change in any ways. But even the companies who want to invest, they need, for more electrification, you need good electricity prices. Today, the government spends a lot of money to simulate a competitive energy system from taxpayers' money. This is not feasible. So we need a system which is providing us with a good bridge, a visible bridge into a future where green investment makes sense. And this is what the debate is all about. I mean, there is so much effort, there is so much readiness and so much ability in industry to go that way. And I'm very hopeful that we will find a way. So there are good signs in the German government, in the European government, that we maybe speed up and open up for really developing this. And I have to say one thing. I'm looking at an opposite booth over there. Won't say the name, but it's a yellow star and a red flag. I mean, we see what happens when countries, for very, very, very selfish purposes, foster investment for several reasons, and you have climate protection as a bycatch. So this is the opposite of what the European approaches.
Yeah. Maria, I'd like to come in with your perspective on the topic of consistency, but also on the topic of de-risking clean tech investments for the business perspective. You know, what are the biggest levers that we need to tackle now as an international, a multi-row, as an international group, but also, of course, on that panel, what would you like to share also from your white paper?
Yes, thank you. I love the conversation, and there is a lot of alignment. Let me start with carbon pricing, okay? Because that's when I heard you about carbon pricing, and obviously, yes, we need carbon pricing so that we price the externalities. Right now, there is $1 trillion that are going to fossil fuel subsidies. But if you think about the externality, that's 5.5 trillion. So we're talking about 6.5 trillion that are going, that are being spent, you know, whether it's through subsidies or through the social cost of air pollution, impact in productivity, and so on and so forth. So we do need to have a roadmap on how to realign incentives and shift those to the industries of the future. The other thing that I hear across the board is that everybody agrees that the future is going to be clean and electric, which means that we know what the end goal is and how can we develop the policy frameworks that lead us to that in a way that you bring the industry along. But let's not invest in technologies of the past when we know the direction of travel. And I think, I think in terms of the risking investments, you know, business do not like stop-and-go policies. Business in Europe, you know, they might be silent because they are confused, because the governments are going back, for, omnibus, not omnibus, this and that. Now flexibility, now no, not that. I mean, how can business going to make investments? So I was talking to some, I'm being a bit provocative here, just to put a bit of spice on the debate, right? And I heard that the US companies are much more active than the European ones. Okay, this was coming from one consultant. Obviously, we hear that the red and yellow star are going forward, right? We're looking there, but now when we hear that even the US is going fast, they say, like, come on, policymakers in Europe, get your act together. I think the industry, you know, and yourselves as well, were quite committed to a roadmap. Yes, there is a lot of improvements that are needed. Yes, it's completely impossible to be, you know, so regulated in certain things, and that needs to be evolved. But from there to this stop and go, this is not good for Europe. It's not good for the business in Europe.
Is this a little pinch also to the German industry?
I think the German industry, you know, with a little bit of humility, but also provocation, I think you have much more opportunities, you know, to bring your skills to the next level, you know, if you embrace the change. And sometimes, yes, that means investing in the future.
Beautiful.
Investing in, yeah.
We are coming to that in a second. Thank you, Maria, for that little spice on our panel. Rafael, I'd like to come to you before we open up that round again. So coming also, of course, from your perspective of local industries, what would you see? What are the main needs and expectation of local industries when they engage with with international partners, with the international business partners in this field? I mean, we've heard the stop and go. This is not the method that they like and that they expect. So what is something that would help right now?
I fully agree with Maria. I mean, stop and go is, you know, stop and go and lack of clarity on where we want to go, you know, with these policies is the worst for business, right? So I think this consistency is absolutely must for the businesses. Now, collaboration. I think to make it effective, first, we need to understand the context. And time to time, we go too stray. We want to copy the good practices that we have in other parts of the world, locally, and probably without enough listening and understanding of this local context. Let me give you one example. When we talk about energy, and my friend Rodrigo here knows very well, Brazil has been in the last year and is today in the forefront when you look at the clean energy matrix that we have, right? I think this is well known for everybody. You know, we have an energy matrix that is built on hydro, is built on solar, it's been on wind, it's been, okay, very much. Second, local context. We have a bioenergy industry that is very strong. And we have been having difficulties with Europe, with some European countries, including my country, when we want to need and support this reality. So cooperation start also for this. It's clearly, you need to understand the realities of each one. But when you look at Brazil, you look at the size, you look at the industry of, let's put it simple, the food system. Brazil is feeding great part of the world. And when you look at this industry, it's one of the most advanced globally in the uses of technology. Can do much better, absolutely. But frankly, from where they have been, where they are today. Okay. Now, cooperation starts by understanding and respecting the local context, and start also by saying, this is what, let me understand what you need, how I can help, okay? And on the other side, when you have this transfer of knowledge, when you have this transfer of best practices, how together you can, go after the new challenges arriving. I insist on this one, particularly on the energy side, because if you talk about sustainable aviation fuel, if you talk about green hydrogen, if we talk about all these new energies, we need a multiple source of energy to, be able to supply the demand of energy, and particularly of electricity, that we have in the world. When we look at the neighbor, and I think everybody will talk about the neighbor, the level of electrification, the part of the electricity already in their matrix is huge. And not only on the generation, but on the demand. And we are late. We are late in Europe, we are late in Brazil, and this is something that we need to implement. And it's not a problem of technologies. Technologies are more than ready and coming from many parts of the world.
What's the problem then?
Determination, policies, incentive, okay?
Rodrigo, what would you agree? Because when we're now diving into the local context that's needed, of course, to see for the partnerships, also for the international partnerships and the multilateral institutions, what would what is the exclamation mark that you would like to put on here on stage to really design these partnerships?
Yeah, one key point, agreeing also with my colleagues here, is to have policies and stable policies, but they are focused on the transition that we want to reach. And what we see is that sometimes there is lack of planning that really makes our development slow down instead of, accelerating as we need. Specific examples from Brazil, if I may. We have been developing very successfully the use of renewable energies. Hydro for a long time, then came biomass and biogas, biofuels as well. And then we had wind, we had solar. And now the next steps that we're still building, and I say we have a lot to learn from Germany on that, is energy storage, where Germany is already way ahead of us. And green hydrogen, where I see opportunities even for a partnership here, because Brazil can, to some extent, use some of its advantage, which is excellent solar resource, excellent wind and hydro resources, to generate some of this green hydrogen, transform it into a fuel that can be transported easily and offer it to the world and to our partners, such as Germany. But for that, we need stable policies, because some of these investments, they are long-term investments. They will take many years to unfold and become a reality. And we see that there is a lack of planning for this structure, at least in Brazilian case. So aligning some of the very positive positioning that we hear the government doing to the policies that are actually making the change happen are key. So the example that was brought from the international level to the national level, today in Brazil, for each R1, our currency, that we invest in renewable energy incentives, there is 2.5 reais being invested in fossil fuel incentives. So our transition is going the wrong way. And it's a target that is shifting. It is improving with time, but we need to accelerate that because we are running out of time.
How can German companies and the German industry help you in that regard? Looking then to Holger as well.
Yes, some of the challenges that we face currently, having a huge renewable electricity grid, is stabilizing this grid and improving our electricity infrastructure. So I think that there is a lot there that we can learn from Germany, especially on the part of flexibility, resource flexibility. This has to do with the use not only of, let's say, stationary energy storage, so the energy storage battery systems that we see being implemented very strongly in Europe, in the United States, in India, and some other countries, but also electric vehicles, where we are not moving fast in Brazil, not at all. And we need that because we can use these electric vehicles not only to charge them with renewable resources, but to discharge them and use them as flexibility tools when we need this excess or additional capacity and additional power to our grid. So this will help us move further from 92% renewable energy into our electricity grid, which is already outstanding, to closer to 100%. And we know that Germany has a target already set in law. By 2035, if I'm not mistaken, please correct me, 100% renewable electricity. That is an interesting target. We don't have that in Brazil yet, and we are ahead.
This target is a very big discussion in Germany as well, but this would be a complete new panel debate. But Holger, listening to what Rodrigo said, where is then the German industry for partnerships with all these to-dos that we were listening to?
The 100% are for power, not for energy, just to say. So there are some other 80 or 70% missing. No, but I think that's the most interesting part, and I'm asking myself, why is not more happening? Let's take the green hydrogen issue. I mean, we've been in BDI after the decision to go for net zero, because we had until 2019, we had a target which meant minus 80 to minus 95 in 2050, and then we went to net zero, which is another world. And there, of course, it was clear there's no such thing as any rest budget for emissions. And then you would have immediately to look at green molecules in any kind. And so we did a large study with Australia. We did a lot of talks. We talked to Colombia, we talked to Brazil, there are a number of countries which have great opportunities to produce green hydrogen. But what does it mean to produce a lot of green hydrogen? Let's be honest, this is a large industrial complex. You need enormous amounts of green electricity, solar panels, wind panels, gigawatts. After that, you need a chemical factory to produce the green hydrogen. Then you need another factory where you need to transform it into ammonia and then ship it and so on. So that's something which Germans really can do greatly. Large installments of plants and stuff like that. So there would be a natural cooperation possibility. So what I'm asking myself is why this is not happening. Not yet. I think there is an offtake problem, multiple hen and egg problems. So producers do not know if they will have a client. The client doesn't know, can he afford the hydrogen and so on. So we really need to find ways. There is a lot of initiative from our government, from the European government, from others, like hydrogen banks and so on. I think this would be a great example, because I am very sure that in the end, it's only going to work in more partnership things. I mean, the time when somebody shipped a commodity to Germany and Germans made something valuable out of it and shipped it to the world, I think this is going to change. But let's talk about batteries. Looking over there again, I mean, you can install battery systems here, but you will need their batteries. There's almost nobody who can provide batteries. So we need to find ways how we can together join and produce our own battery cells. I mean, for a system you need cells. A system is something Germans can really produce well together with others. But we will always come back to the problem, there is no fair global level playing field on transformation.
Maria, was there a direct point to that? And otherwise I would end up the conversation soon with Heike, because...
Yes, just a comment that, you know, the beauty of renewables is that they are simple and scalable. And I do invite us to invest more in simple and scalable. So there is this storage technology that I'm fascinated, which is bricks. You hit the bricks, and that's how you store energy. Cheaper than bricks, there's not that much. So I think, yeah, invite us to explore, and bricks can be scalable as well, right? And you can place them anywhere. So yes, I invite everybody to look at solutions that can be scalable and easy to implement and can become cheap fast.
But you mentioned one thing, and this is implementation in partner countries, and that's why I also wanted to come back to the German government perspective, because of course, as some of you know, there is this international climate initiative called ICI. Maybe you can give us a thought on that last round. How can ICI further promote this implementation in partner countries and the scaling up of clean tech? What would you say?
Yeah, thank you for this last question, because I think we just came to an important point here. So that we can use partnerships or build even better forms of collaboration to overcome, I think, almost every partnership, every challenge. I mean, also looking at other countries, wherever, I mean, we can, on the one hand, complain, and we cannot allow ourselves to be naive about what is happening in regarding economic policy and so on. But by forging partnerships with bigger markets, with other countries who have the same ambition. When I just mentioned the coalition on carbon markets that Brazil, with China, the EU and other countries was forging here, to have like a broader spectrum of countries who follow the same objectives, and by doing so, making the competitiveness ideally between those regions and huge regions less of a problem. I think so partnerships are key. So now we were talking China, Brazil, but there are also the perspective of more vulnerable countries, developing countries, but also emerging markets. And so ICI is there from the German government to really build partnerships, to foster ambition in countries, to follow the priorities that are built in the NDCs on adaptation, on mitigation, and see where also there the innovation lies, where we started our discussion with. I mean, there can also be a lot of innovation in adaptation, where we need also to provide startup capital that then can be taken up by the private sector in all the different programs that are part of NDCs in the Global South, but also, of course, in Europe. And by doing so, and my last word, I think, and this is what COPs are also about, to really experience our potential to work together and to solve challenges. And yes, there are the long nights, but ideally the long nights lead to something productive that brings us forward. And that is great about COPs, specifically here in Belém. Thank you.
Wonderful. And with that, we close that session. Thank you very much to Heike, Henn, Holger, Lösch, Rafael, Segrera, Rodrigo, Sauaia, and Maria Mendiluce. Thank you. This is your round of applause when we were talking about how to accelerate clean tech for transformation. Thank you very much, and I'll see you soon again.
Global multilateral, realizing just transitions. to the German Climate Pavilion at COP30 in Billey.